Hello, hi, how are you? I hope you guys are having an amazing day today. Hello! So today's video is one that I'm so excited about because I feel like I haven't just ranted about horrible makeup in a long time. Like really just let go, let loose, and did a good old makeup rant. And I love doing these. Here's the thing, I don't care about especially larger makeup companies. I'm not here to be their friend. I'm not here to not hurt their feelings. I don't really care about corporations' feelings. So this video is gonna be just letting go of anything and just saying what I truly think about these palettes, which is that they're the ugliest palettes that I've ever seen put onto the makeup market. And I know that's a strong opinion. I want to do a disclaimer, and I never do disclaimers in videos really anymore. I'm kind of the opinion that if you come into this video and you get offended, you're gonna be offended regardless of if I say this, but I am gonna say it anyway. I know that makeup is very subjective. I talk pretty openly about how subjective makeup is. I think my favorite thing could be your least favorite thing and vice versa. So if one of the palettes I talk about is like your all-time holy grail favorite eyeshadow palette, the best thing you've ever tried, and I'm sitting here telling you it's ugly, that's completely just objective opinions. We can have different opinions. We can be on our way. I will not apologize for having strong opinions about makeup because it really at the end of the day is just makeup. But if I offend you, I apologize in advance. I just like to talk about things that I think suck. So with that being said, let's jump right into the video. I want to start off by saying quickly too that this video was inspired by 90s Love Child here on YouTube. I saw that she posted this video and instantly before even watching it, I was like, that is such a good video idea. Like I was like that, I think I told her on Twitter, I was like, that is such a good video idea, like so good. And so now I'm stealing it, but I am giving her credit. She has a fantastic channel here on YouTube and I would highly recommend go checking her out. I love her content. So I'm gonna link her down below. And if you guys wanna check her out, feel free to, because I really like her and her content. She came up with this wonderful idea. Just got a notification for my own podcast. By the way, I have a podcast. me and my fiance have a podcast called Middle Ground. We've been taking it a lot more seriously the past couple weeks. We kind of started it not really taking it seriously, but now we are. So if you want to go subscribe to my podcast, it'll be linked down below. Talk about a lot of things over there with my fiance Charles. It was kind of fun to go through makeup that I think is really ugly. Like it was kind of fun. Walk through memory lane kind of. So the very first palette that I absolutely had to talk about, and it really like popped into my brain quickly when I was thinking about doing this video, and that is the Dose of Colors Hidden Treasures palette. The palette has always irrationally pissed me off. I know a lot of people really enjoy this palette and like this palette and said that the formula was really good. I remember there was a time actually when I feel like this was a very exclusive palette and you couldn't just like walk in stores to get it. It was selling out. People were super obsessed with it. Everybody said it was so innovative and so cool because the formula was super good and it had this weird layout. Frankly, now, I don't know when this came out. I think it came out in like 2016 if I'm remembering right. Frankly, now, awful. Like I look at this and I absolutely hate it. It's only 10 shades, which really is not that many shadows for an eyeshadow palette. And I think the fact that I know that they could have put about 25 in this palette with the sizing that they had, and they chose to randomly put it around to make it 10, pisses me off. Like just the layout. I normally am not super picky about palette layouts. Like if you want to do something kind of funky or kind of weird, like the Kristen Leanne palette, I was like, you know what? Like if you want to do something kind of funky and weird, not my cup of tea, but not like egregious, this to me is horrible. Something about the amount of wasted space with no real rhyme or reason makes me irrationally annoyed. And also I feel like this palette, right now it says it's only $25, but I feel like it was more expensive at the time. And I feel like the only reason it was more expensive was because they had to make a new mold for this stupid layout that nobody is ever going to use again because it's stupid. My other problem, it's called the Hidden Treasures palette. So I don't know about you, but when I think of like buried treasure, hidden treasure, I think of pirates. I think of gold. I think of like treasure chests and caves and rubies and, you know, emeralds and all like treasure, like hidden treasure, right? I think of pirates. Captain Jack Sparrow popping out of this. Like this just color color story and idea is so boring. At the time, I can kind of get why this would have been cool because there weren't as many palettes that were neutrals to choose from. So the fact that it was a neutral palette was probably appealing, but if you're looking at this from a 2020 lens, be in every single anti-haul. It's a boring, basic, neutral palette with a couple of shimmers that is relying on having a weird layout in the packaging to sell. It is, let's call it what it is. There's no real theme to it. The theme doesn't really match up, which is kind of interesting because I feel as if Dose of Colors, especially recently, I actually really like their little monochromatic palettes that they do. I think they're kind of cool. I think they're a little expensive, but I think they're cool. They make sense. They're cohesive. They follow a specific theme, whereas this is just kind of a jumbled of neutrals and then calling it the Hidden Treasures palette. I would have at least had more respect for the palette and been okay with the randomness in which they put the shades if it at least had some interesting like jewel tones or something super, super unique and interesting that actually made sense with the palette. They could have even kept the neutral mattes and then made all of these more basic shimmery shades into like jewel tones. Just something that had a little bit more depth and it went a little bit more with the theme. I think that would have enhanced this palette so much, but I think in retrospect, I look at this palette and I just absolutely hate it. There's especially in the corners. You could have fit a whole, even with this weird configuration of how you did these shades, in those corners, you could have put a shade and still made it weird and had a little bit more in there. Why? Okay, this palette, I actually owned this one and I bought this one. This is the Kat Von D Saint and Sinner palette. I know this might be a bit controversial, but hear me out. Objectively, it's ugly. I know, and I said that in a Yasser I think it was an anti-haul. When I was first starting my YouTube channel, I said, I was like, I think it's kind of ugly. And somebody left me probably one of the most scathing comments I've ever received that was basically saying that Kat Von D's a genius and that it's made to look like stained glass, and that's why there's no color story, and that's why it doesn't make any sense color story wise, because stained glass doesn't make sense color story wise. So that's why they're arranged in a way that isn't necessarily pleasing to the eye. First of all, I've seen a lot of stained glass in my day. It's all pretty pleasing to the eye. I feel like it makes sense. It goes in like a specific color story. They use basic color theory to create these beautiful masterpieces. So that argument as a whole is like BS, but I bought into it. And I thought, this was at the time too, this was the palette right after the Mi Vida Loca palette. Chris, remember that one? The Mi Vida Loca Christmas collection. Anybody remember that? This was the palette directly after that. And I had just spent the past 6 months on YouTube being like, the Mi Vida Loca palette is the best palette ever created because everybody loved it. Everybody just people were buying it for like hundreds of dollars on the resale market. Everybody was so utterly obsessed with the Mi Vida Loca palette. So in my head, as like a new person to makeup who really wanted to build a collection, I was like, I'm gonna miss out on the hype of the Saint and Sinner palette. Like I'm gonna miss out on that the same way I missed out on the Mi Vida Loca palette. So I have to buy it. This is so stupid, by the way. Like the way that I thought about things, I need this because I need to be on the trend, like on the trends of everything. The reality is this palette is set up so poorly. It's just honestly set up in the absolute worst way. The color story was so weird to work with, being that there were so many brights and then you have these kind of weird cool tones. It was hard to work with. Also, again, with the wasted space, there was just a lot of wasted space in here. I feel like if you actually wanted it to be stained glass, like you would have made pans that had like a curve to them at the top to fill out that top section. I feel like that would have actually looked a lot more like stained glass. I will say the external packaging on this is like gorgeous. I don't think that's ugly in any way. I think it's really pretty. Is it very bulky and in turn difficult to store? Yeah, but I will say that the artwork was really pretty. The inside was a disaster. And also for functionality purposes, this is petty, but the way that you had to close the doors on the palette, because it had these like cathedral doors you open, which you never wanted to open anyway because it was difficult to work with because the color stories didn't make any sense in my personal opinion. The way you had to open it, it had like this little circle piece that opened with one door, but then it didn't with the other. So you had to open and close it a very particular way, which this is kind of a small and petty thing, but having to do that was just annoying to me. I paid like $65 to have to treat this palette like it literally was a piece of stained glass. I feel like people tried to defend this palette by being like, she's an artist, you have to be an artist to understand it, when in reality it was just kind of an ugly palette. Didn't really do well. Oh, this. I bought this too. Oh my god. Okay, so this is the Too Faced White Chocolate Chip Eyeshadow Palette. Okay, first of all, this is just ash. No better way I can say it. This is so ashy. Every single, I bought this because it was cheap. That's really the only reason. I wanted like a Too Faced palette and it was so cheap. It was like, I think it was like 15, it had to have been like $22 or $23. But I bought it with something else and I was so excited to get it because everybody had been hyping up Too Faced. This was again when I was first getting into makeup and I actually got it in my hand. Number one, it is so gosh darn tiny. If you're gonna make a palette that the component is really that small, honestly, just make it like a quad. Why are you trying to shove, there's 11 shades in here. Why are you trying to shove that many shades in that small of a palette? Like just make it a quad and make it solid instead of trying to shove all of these different shades in here that frankly, it didn't matter how many shades they had in here because they all looked the exact same on the eye. These were the most unpigmented, unblendable, unusable shades that I have probably, I'm trying to think if I've ever tried a worse formula for a palette than this Too Faced one. I don't know if I have ever tried a worse eyeshadow palette formula than this one. It didn't even show up. It was the weirdest thing. Nothing showed up. Like, it was so bizarre to try to work with it. And also the shimmers looked horrible in my opinion. And also just looking back at this palette now, the fact that I ever thought this would be like cute, there's nothing in the actual colors to really deepen anything up. It's all super, super light. Unless you have the skin of like Edward Cullen, this might have been able to be deepened for you. But for anyone with even slight pigmentation, you were just with this palette. And also again, just aesthetically, I mean, there's that one huge pan at the top. They tried to basically make bigger chocolate bar palettes that have been so successful into minis. And I just think that that format doesn't transfer the same. You already have so many tiny little pans. Why would you make one of them bigger? Why are they lined up kind of weird? Like the spacing in the palette's kind of weird. The actual external packaging was very, very cheap. Overall, was not a fan of this one and I think it's so ugly. Next, oh my God. Okay, here we go. So, the Tarte Pro Remix. Okay. There's some backstory here. I owned and actually loved the Tarte Pro palette, which was the first one in this sort of realm that they came out with. And I will tell you why I love that palette. The formula was okay. It wasn't fantastic, but it was okay. It had really sleek, nice packaging that was aesthetically pleasing to look at. It was black and it made sense. The way that that palette was set up was there was 4 mattes. I'll have a picture of it. There were 4 mattes in a row and at the end you had a circle shade that was the shimmery shade. And the reason that palette was perfect, especially for someone like me who had just started doing makeup at that time, was because it was set up perfect color stories to create a very easy eye look with 4 mattes and a shimmer. So if you just went down the row, you were like, okay, today I'm feeling orange. So you went down the orange row and you did this on your lid, this on your crease, this in your outer crease, this here, and then you put the shimmer shade over your lid and done. You have a look that's an orange look. They had that with like a purple. They had a deeper one that you could do that was a more smoky look. Like they had it set up so nicely that it was an easy to use palette. Aesthetically, it looked very pleasing. And while it was a little bit overpriced, especially for the formula wasn't horrible. And for somebody who was new to makeup, or even if you weren't, you just wanted an easy palette to use, I think it was great. Why on earth would you take what is such a good idea from all sides? Like aesthetically, it looks nice. It's a decent formula. It's a good idea. Why would you take that and create this monstrosity? This is the Tarte Pro Remix palette and I have no words. Why? First of all, feel as though, because they did a whole collection with this style packaging where it's like this, they have like the splatter paint and spray paint. This is like the Tarte Pro's edgy aunt, and like that's who this is. This was so bad. They did it with their bronzer palette too. They made like a blush palette and I heard the formula and that wasn't bad, but this palette aesthetically is so gosh darn ugly. First of all, the blue, bright pink and teal splatter paint is just so ugly in my opinion to look at. And this is coming from someone who had a splatter painted bedroom up until she was like 18 years old. So I loved splatter paint. I think this is so ugly because especially of the colors they put on top. If they wanted to do that like weird splatter paint all over the front of the palette, I wouldn't have really had a problem. But putting the splatter paint as the backlay of the actual colors throws me off so hard. I feel like almost if they had put all of this on a black background, it probably actually would have looked a lot better, but they didn't. They put it on this weird splatter paint background and these colors look so boring and drained and no color to them. They look so bad compared to the brightness and the neonness that is behind them. It makes all of the shades and the colors look so much more muted and dull than they probably actually were in person. And also, like real talk, you're gonna make the front of this palette so exciting and so crazy with all these colors, and this is the inside of the palette? You have cool tones, blues, greens, all muted, kind of boring colors. I don't know why they wouldn't just do, because if they wanted to do a more colorful version of the Tarteist Pro, like not really that colorful because it's Tarte and they don't really do things that are colorful. If you wanted to do that, why wouldn't you just do a similar format where it was all the mattes and then the shimmers, but they were slightly more exciting and less neutral and had more color to it? It was such an easy route to go with this Tarteist Pro palette because the first one actually did really well. It was pretty successful. I don't know why they would go total 180, and again, yet again, as like Tarte always does, is the packaging is just 10 times more interesting than the actual color story of the palette. And frankly, I think their packaging really screwed them over because in turn, because of that packaging, it made the palette look worse. Yeah, this is one of the ugliest atrocities. Oh, here's another one from Tarte. Okay, the Lele Pons palette. I'm not gonna harp on this too much because I do feel that this got anti-hauled pretty heavily, and obviously people really laid into it, but I'm sorry, my bathroom floor is literally the background of this Lele Pons palette. This marbled tiling is literally what my bathroom floor looks like. Like that is what they chose for this packaging, is my bathroom floor tile, which is a choice. I also will say just the fact that they tried to like tilt everything to a 45-degree angle to make it more interesting, cheap, like come on. And also the outer exterior of this packaging, like with the pink and the gray marble. I feel like they literally created this palette in Photoshop like the night before that it was going to be launched, and then they quickly made it into production. There's no way that this took months to create and took a bunch of time. Like they made this as generic as humanly possible. Nothing was put into this. And in a way, I guess that makes sense because they knew that Lele Pons had such a built-in audience that they were gonna buy it no matter what it looked like. So they didn't have to put in the effort. But for the rest of us consumers, I see this BS and I'm like, well, there's another strike in Tarte's book for me because I'm so sick of them putting out these stupid products. The matte to shimmer ratio is also super interesting in this palette now that I'm really looking at it. I never really looked at the actual colors because there's 3 mattes. They really just did this in Photoshop because even if you look at the shade names, they're not centered. Oh my God, they really just did this in Photoshop. There's no way that they spent time on this packaging. 0%. It would have been even more cool if they had just made them diamonds. Why did you put rectangular pans at a 45-degree? Just make them diamonds. Do an actual shape. Like give us anything. Oh my God, all of these are so bad that I just like actually cannot. Okay. This is the Marc Jacobs Beauty, the Wild One iconic eyeshadow palette. The thing about these Marc Jacobs palettes, the big ones that they do every holiday season, is that first of all, they are 100 doll hairs, which is a crime. It's criminal, honestly, to charge that much for what these are and what they look like. I actually don't mind the iconic mini palettes that they have normally. They're like an elongated oval and they actually look kind of cool. Like the color stories are kind of nice. They all have kind of monochromatic themes to them. I actually enjoy those palettes. I don't own one, but I've heard the formula is good and I'm not like mad at those. I think they look really sleek. They go with the brand, whatever. Why on earth is Marc Jacobs selling me and I know before you comment, I know that somebody is going to comment and be like, they're a fashion house, like this is what fashion is, this is no, this is so weird. Like the fact that they tried to sell you a zebra printed clam is the most absurd thing that has ugly ashy colors inside of it. Ridiculousness. Like what was the team at Marc Jacobs thinking? And also I felt the same way about that stupid gold clam. These aren't even like, it wasn't even made out of like, I know it wouldn't be made out of real gold obviously, but they didn't even try to make it feel nice and luxurious. This is plastic. It is plastic painted with zebra print that they are charging you $100 for. I can't even get past how absolutely ugly the zebra print is and how weird that is and how I don't even mind zebra print, honestly. I think it's just so disgusting in this context. I hate it. The actual color story too, like I said, it's not even a cute color story. It's not even, and it's nothing to do with zebras. It has nothing to do with like a safari. It has nothing to do with like, I don't even know. Where else do zebras, what do zebras even do? It's not like Lion King themed. Like, I don't understand what the point of any, there isn't even a black shade in this. You're telling me you did a zebra palette and you didn't even put a fucking matte black in there? Come on, lazy. Lazy, money grab, stupid. I think this palette was so, just so ugly. Oh my God. I know people collect these and I know those like big clam palettes are huge for Marc Jacobs. They just have always baffled me at why people pay $100 for that. It's not even, and I've heard the formula is not even good. It's not even the normal eyeshadow palette formula because it's their holiday collection. So it's not even a good formula. You're paying $100 for nothing. I had to talk about Morphe. There's so many to choose from. Like so many good horrible palettes to choose from because Morphe has just been a canker sore on the beauty community for a while now. This one, this is the Morphe 35G Bronze Goals palette. These are all the same exact color. Can you believe that there were that like we bought this? There was a time when Morphe was popping. I was super into them for a while because I was like, they're so cheap, they're so affordable. All these beauty gurus are telling me it's the best formula on the planet. Like there was a time when I would have seen this and been like, look at all the browns I can get. Look at all my options for brown that I could play with. Like why, who on earth looked at this and thought this is the move? You can still buy this, I'm pretty sure, because it's on, oh, it's through Amazon, so it's probably not legit, but, and the fact that they had the audacity to call it bronzed gold. It's hard to discern from this picture what is a matte and what is a shimmer. And it honestly kind of looks like for every matte, they just made that shade, but in a shimmery formula, which is a choice. Man. This is so bad. 35 shades of just utterly gross poop brown. Like I just can't, with like 2 blacks thrown in at the bottom in case you want to deepen things up. Oh my God. I guess the only thing I could think was like if you're a makeup artist and you needed a but there's not even like a good spectrum of neutrals or browns in here. It's all dark and muddied and then there's a couple of weird yellowy ones. Like, oh my God. So ugly. I also had honorable mention the 3503, which is just a treat to look at, like a throwback to when the 35s were like dominating the beauty community and all anybody could talk about was those freaking 35 palettes. This was their last ditch attempt to make the 35 happen and boy did they try. I love the 2 greens. I think they were like, you know what, I think people are getting sick of the warm tones and our 35 pan palettes of warm tones. You know what the people want? They want green. And they were like, but ma'am, how will we put in 25 browns if we put in a green? And they were like, don't worry, just 2. Just 2 greens for the people who want them and like a hot pink. Okay. And that weird glitter shade. None of the other shades are whatever. This was just honorable mention, but I saw this one and I was like, wow, what a blast from the past when the 35 just dominated. Urban Decay had some really good ones. Like if I would pick a brand that has consistently had some of the ugliest palettes, it's Urban Decay. Because while they've had some really great hits, they've also had some huge misses. But I picked the 2 that I hated the most after looking through their catalog of bad palettes. And the first one is the Heavy Metals Metallic Eyeshadow Palette from Urban Decay. Now, to Urban Decay's credit, I heard from multiple review channels that I watch that the actual formula on this palette was really good. I heard a lot of people really liked the shimmers. They felt like it was a really fun, shimmery palette. However, almost all of those channels that talked about how much they loved it decluttered this palette because of how poorly the packaging was done. The way that this palette worked was you had to like slide it out of its component. Like you couldn't just take the lid off. You had to like slide it and then take the thing off. Having the mirror in the middle also just aesthetically really throws me off. What I think would have been cool and honestly a missed opportunity is kind of what they did with the Back Talk palette where they had a mirror in the middle and they had like the blush on one side and the shadows on the other. Had they made this similar to the Back Talk palette where it was still small and concise but it had a bunch of different shimmers where you had your warm tone shimmers and your cool tone shimmers and then the mirror in the middle. I didn't really love that idea, but at least it made more sense and it was concise. It didn't take up a whole lot of space for a mirror. The other thing about this mirror is it's kind of pointless. You're not gonna hold up this big hunk of fake plastic to like hold the mirror up to you. There wasn't a way to prop this palette up so that the mirror was actually functional in any way. It was just stuck there in the middle. while you had to keep this giant hunk of a palette on your countertop trying to like get the shades out so you can put them on. It sucks because I think with Urban Decay, like again, I've heard the formula was good. I heard the shimmers were good. I probably would have been more interested in this palette. Also, the actual top that this came with, the purple top that you see there, didn't even make a whole lot of sense either. Like there's no real cohesion to this palette. And I feel like it sucks because it was a good idea, the warm tone and the cool tone shimmers. I think in theory that's a great idea, but I think the execution was just so bad and made it look so unaesthetically pleasing. I'm just gonna throw up the Game of Thrones palette. I hated this palette so much. I don't even want to talk about it. I loved Game of Thrones and I was actually so excited when I found out Urban Decay was gonna do a Game of Thrones collection because I thought it was so fitting for them as a brand, and they just made it so bad. So bad. So poorly done. So poorly executed. I hate everything about this palette. I don't even know what else to say other than I hate everything about it. Okay, I know I'm gonna get a little bit of crap for this one because again, this was a palette that everybody loved. People bought it like secondhand for hundreds of dollars. I know that people lusted after this palette. However, I just always thought and will continue to think that the Alice Through the Looking Glass palette from Urban Decay is so bad. Not even just the color story of the actual palette. It's okay. It's kind of boring, and I think people really hyped it up because they loved the fact that you opened the little thing and a butterfly came out and okay, this was just such an unnecessarily bulky and huge palette that was such a waste of space. Like the fact that you had to pull the palette out, the actual eyeshadow part, like it was a drawer, makes it feel like the eyeshadow portion of it and the actual makeup portion of it, which is what you're buying, was a complete and total afterthought. And realistically, that little butterfly, like, yeah, it looks cute. What are you gonna do? Keep this open on your vanity with the butterfly open as a display piece? I'm sure some people did do that, but that's the only way I can see you getting your money out of a palette like this. And also, this is kind of an irrational point, the fact that the mirror is so freaking small in a palette that is this freaking large is annoying. They could have still had that frame around it so it looked like a more antique mirror and made the mirror a little bit bigger, because this mirror, unlike in their Heavy Metals palette, actually props up. So people could have actually used this mirror to do their makeup and actually put it on a table and propped it up nicely as a mirror. And they were like, we're actually gonna make it really, really, really tiny. I think they just have a mirror sizing problem. I think Urban Decay just doesn't know if they should make it big or make it small, so they just make the wrong choice every time. But this palette, I always never understood the hype around it. Like, never. Okay, friends, so that is going to be it for me. That was my video on the ugliest makeup palettes I've ever seen, and that's how I feel about that. I love you guys so much. I would love to know what you think your ugliest palettes are. Again, please don't take offense if I talked about your favorite palette. I don't mean it personally, just kind of my opinion. Makeup is different for everybody. And yeah, I love you guys so much. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, or just subscribe, or do neither. Honestly, just so happy you're watching me. Thank you so much for being here. My merch, my social media, and everything I am wearing on my face will be linked down below, along with a link to register to vote. That's right, you can click on that link, you can register to vote, and you can be part of your democracy. Super fun thing to do. And along with that will also be my little social justice spotlight. Make sure you click on those links and, you know, be informed. It's important. And yeah, I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!